and also quite an interesting take on a romance with murder being involved.
Probably because she's on the drugs.
Fish, creature, water creature, man? Well, hello friends, and welcome back, or welcome for the first time if you are new here. My name is Lori Beth, and today is, as I always like to say at the beginning of every single video that I record, one of my favorite videos to do, which is my TBR video. And honestly, I think I'm gonna kind of change up the verbiage of these videos a little bit, because I feel like sometimes I create a TBR and it makes me automatically feel like I am locked and loaded, like this is like written in stone, this is what is going to happen, and I always end up giving disclaimers about how just because I say it's on my TBR doesn't mean I'm gonna get to it or like it or even have time for it. So I'm gonna start calling these videos hopefuls. Today we are going to talk about my July hopefuls, what I am really hoping to be able to read within the month of July. Again, these are all just books that sound appealing to me, or books that I've had on my radar for a while, or books that I don't even really know that much about. So if I pick them up and I start reading them and I don't like them, oh well, it was a hopeful. But with that being said, and without further ado, we are going to go ahead and jump right in because we do have quite a few books to go over today. All right, and one of the first books I have on my hopefuls list for the month of July is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I have never read a novel by Virginia Woolf before, but if you have been here for a minute, you know that I have been on this journey into women's literature, literature written by women, about women, for women, and I am not slowing down for the foreseeable future. So now I am kind of going into this rabbit hole of authors that I have never read before, and authors more specifically that have had kind of an impact as far as women in literature go. And Virginia Woolf is very clearly one of those authors, and I don't know too much about this story, but it was very appealing to me because from the synopsis, it describes going through a day with a female character who is preparing for some sort of party or gathering at her house. And it sounds like the story takes place over the course of a day, which in my opinion is very, very interesting. I don't read a lot of books like that are over like a weekend or a day or just like a few hours time. I read a romance last month that was like that, and it was actually very, very enjoyable. There was something kind of fun about knowing that timeline while you were reading. And again, I don't know too much about the story. I know it is kind of described as one of her most impactful novels. And then obviously just reading anything by Virginia Woolf in general is very intriguing to me, just knowing the kind of life that she led, what she brought to literature, especially literature from women in general. And then what is really cool about this book is it is kind of one of those flip books. So on this side starts Mrs. Dalloway, and then on the other side is The Hours by, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name, Michael Cunningham. And again, I don't know too much about it, but I think it is a more modern day inspired story by Mrs. Dalloway. So I was really drawn to this because, first of all, I get to read a book by Virginia Woolf, and then also from the time period of it actually being written by her, and then on the flip side, reading the book The Hours by Michael Cunningham, kind of from a more present point of view and taking inspiration from that original story. That's all I really know about it. I was just very, very intrigued by it, and again, intrigued by the fact that I could kind of get two stories in one book. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how this goes. I probably want to get to this pretty quickly. It's calling to me. So I am going to start this pretty early in the month of July, and we will see how that one fares for me. Next up on my list will be The Pisces by Melissa Broder. I read Death Valley by Melissa Broder last month as well, and absolutely fell in love with that book. It was such a weird little novel, and I really enjoyed Melissa Broder's writing in that story. It was very unhinged, kind of chaotic, and I have a feeling that most of her books are kind of written in that same prose. What I know about this book is it is about a character who is going through some sort of breakup in her life. She is an academic, so she has been studying a very prominent female character in history and writing her dissertation on this character. And then as she's going through this breakup, is kind of feeling lost. She goes to pet sit for her sister and stays in her sister's beach house watching her sister's dog. Along this journey, she kind of starts to become infatuated with some sort of like fish creature, water creature, man fish. I don't know exactly if it's an actual fish, if it's just an aquatic being, if it is somewhat human at all, but she kind of starts to fall into this like love story relationship with this creature. That's all I really know about it. I think it's like super kind of weird, following this woman going through very, very trying times in her life, and then also kind of falling into something that is maybe good, maybe bad. I don't know if it's toxic. I don't know exactly what it is. I was just so drawn in by the synopsis of it, and also the fact that I have read Death Valley and loved that book so much I couldn't put it down, that I want to read more by Melissa Broder, and I felt like this was another good one to get my hands on, so I'm excited to read this one too. So next up on my list is The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. This is the second novel in the Crowns of Nyaxia story. The first book is The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which I read early this year and completely fell in love with Carissa Broadbent as a fantasy author. I think she is absolutely brilliant. She, at least in the first book, she wrote this very, very true adult fantasy, which I had kind of not realized that I had been missing. I feel like we see a lot of young adult fantasies coming out almost like at an alarming rate sometimes, and I do enjoy a lot of them, but sometimes they are missing the depth in the world building that I truly need out of an adult fantasy novel, and that's what she gave me in the first book of the series. The second book is going to pick up, as far as I know, right where the first book left off. So there was kind of, I would say, like a tumultuous ending to book one, and the two main characters in the story are at this crux of what is going to happen between the two of them. So some trust has been betrayed. Lots of secrets were revealed in book one for our main female character, and I feel like book two is going to just kind of be eye-opening as far as what is going to happen between the relationship after a big breach of trust happened in book one. But I am really, really excited to get to book two, and I waited just a little bit because I know that book three comes out, I believe, before the end of this year. I do along with my 2024 journey into literary fiction, I have also been trying to be more adamant about finishing a series within a decent time frame, because I'm telling you what, I have always had this weird thing with a series. If you know, you know, because you've been here for a hot second and you've heard me talk about it before, where I will start a series. If I fall in love with it, I put off finishing it because I don't want it to end. I get so involved in these characters and so like emotionally connected to the storylines and the worlds that I never want them to end. But then sometimes I wait so long that I have a hard time remembering what happened in the previous book. That's the old Lori. The new Lori is being very good about finishing a series, again, within somewhat of a normal time frame. So I read the first book at the beginning of the year, plan on reading the second book now, and then I would like to read the third book as soon as it comes out. And I kind of did that on purpose. Look at me being conscious and planning things, because that way I could space some things in between them, but it wasn't so much time that I wouldn't remember what happened from one book to the next. At least that's my hope. But with that being said, I'm really excited to get back into this world and see what she's going to do with book two, and hope that I love it as much as I loved book one. And I would also love to read I want to say this is going to be a different book for me, and I had never read anything by this author before, but I have a feeling it will be quite that, like a different book for me to even get into and read, and that is Perfume Pain by Anna Dorn. This has been described as very messy, very like almost hard to read because in this story we follow a main character who is an author herself, and she lives in LA, and she has spent her career kind of just writing these bizarro lesbian fiction novels while she was like blitzed out of her mind on drugs. She has also spent a lot of time on these drugs doing interviews and kind of saying some very unhinged and very problematic things, and tends to be this person that kind of just like speaks what's on her mind.
Probably because she's on the drugs.
But with that issue, she becomes kind of a you love to hate her type of person. So now she's this author that has become popular, but then kind of puts her foot in her mouth. She sounds very self-sabotaging almost. And the book itself has been described as like a little cringy and a little hard to read, but that's what drew me to it, especially because of this journey that I've been on with the literary fiction that I've been reading. And I want to get in the nitty-gritty. I want to read about these women that are like kind of bad women. But I think that getting a little out of my comfort zone is good for me sometimes. I have been a pretty sensitive reader in the past, but as I am kind of turning a new leaf, going into this new season of reading, I'm finding myself being drawn more to these very like real and raw narratives in books, and I'm kind of enjoying them. I'm even finding myself like wanting to reach more towards horror books, which is absolutely wild and way out of my comfort zone. But I feel like I'm just kind of growing and changing as a reader, and I am a firm believer in the fact that we grow in the uncomfortable. So that is also what kind of drew me to this, because it has a lot of the same tropes of the books that I've been reading recently with a little extra edge to it. And I think that it's going to kind of, again, make me a little uncomfortable, like make your skin crawl a little bit. But I also kind of love the feeling of getting through something like that and feeling like it has just kind of broadened my mind a little bit as a reader. Again, I've never read anything by this author before, so we shall see. I'm very excited about this one. Plus, the cover is absolutely stunning. Like, I absolutely can't wait to read this book. All right, and up next, I actually have this book, but I have not opened it yet because this will be in another video, so you will get to see this book inside and out when I get to my unboxing video for this month. But the book is God The Gumiho by Sophie Kim, and I'm really excited about this one, like beyond excited. And I want to read the synopsis to you a little bit because I feel like it will be a better version of what the book is actually about than me just kind of babbling on about it. In this sly and dazzling contemporary fantasy, the most notorious nine-tailed fox in Korea pairs up with a trickster god-turned-detective to track down a wrathful demon. Before it can destroy the mortal world, Kim Hani has retired from a life of devouring souls. She is, simply put, too full. Once known as the infamous Scarlet Fox, she now spends her days working in a coffee shop and annoying a particularly irritating, if unfairly handsome, trickster god as often as she can. That god is Seoka the Fallen. Exiled from the heavenly kingdom of Okwang, he now begrudgingly resides in the mortal realm, working towards his redemption and suffering through his interactions with the particularly infuriating, if sneakily charming, Gumiho barista at his favorite cafe. But when a powerful demon escapes from the underworld and threatens to end all of humanity, Okwang's emperor offers Seoka an enticing bargain. Kill this rogue creature as well as the legendary and elusive Scarlet Fox, and he will be reinstated as a god. I am so excited about this because this is also a contemporary fantasy, which I feel like we don't get a lot of. I am such a big fan of like urban fantasy, contemporary fantasy. It gives me all of those things that I like kind of all rolled into one fun little package. This sounds like such a fun story. I like this idea of them being kind of like this enemies to I don't know what yet. I would assume that there's going to be a romance involved in this, but maybe not. You never know. But the fact that they kind of like annoy the crap out of each other, they're constantly bickering. I love tension like that in a book, especially a fantasy book. but also like this greater goal of him trying to come back from being exiled, and to do that he has to take this person down. I don't know. I love it. It sounds like it's going to be kind of fun and exciting, very action-packed, and I am curious to see if there's going to be a romance in here, because one of my favorite types of tropes is an enemies to lovers. So we shall see how this one goes. And another July hopeful that I have on my list for myself is Kairos by Jenny Erpenbeck. This is a translated novel by a German author, and a very gripping story, at least from my opinion. And actually, I'm going to read the synopsis of this one too, because I don't want to mess this one up. This sounds... And also, I'm just going to read the synopsis. The long-running affair between Katharina and Hans begins in East Berlin at the end of the 1980s, and as it takes its passionate, difficult course, the world of the socialist GDR collapses around them. As the Times literary supplement writes, the weight of history, the particular experiences of East and West, and the ways in which cultural and subjective memory shape individual identity have always been present in Erpenbeck's work. She knows that no one is all bad, no state all rotten, and she masterfully captures the existential bewilderment of this period between states and ideologies. This book, again, sounded very, very gripping because of this environment, right? We're talking Berlin in the 80s, the Berlin Wall, we're talking about East and West, a very, very tumultuous time in history for this country and the people that lived through it. And out of that, a love story rises, and I can't wait to see what this author does with this. Thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, the culture, the environment, all of it. I feel like this is going to be a page turner. And if I'm being honest, I feel like this would be one of those books that will probably leave me broken and destroyed. But with that being said, I'm very excited to read it. I think it sounds like a beautiful story and another hopeful for the month of July. All right, hang in there with me, you guys. We are almost there. I have one more hopeful for the month of July, and that is Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. I know, a book talk book. It is happening to me. But, I mean, also, that's not that odd for me. I get drawn in to these books that blow up on BookTok and BookTube and Bookstagram. I think some of them do have legitimate reasons behind them. But more importantly, I'm reading this because a friend of mine already had the physical copy. She had just finished it. She said she absolutely devoured it, and also mentioned that the audio that goes along with it, which I have heard time and time again, also kind of makes the story very fun. But I don't know too much about this book besides the fact that it is a dark romance. I believe both of our main characters are somehow involved in murdering people, or being serial killers, or they are, or one of them is, or both of them are. I don't know. It is apparently a trip, a very good time, kind of spicy, and also quite gruesome, but because of all the other things going on in the book, it makes it kind of like satirical, I want to say. But I'm really, really excited about this. So a friend did lend me her physical copy. I'm excited that I have that. I am also going to incorporate the audio with this as well, because there are so many good things said about the audio, and I think that's going to make it just kind of like a really fun experience. It's nice to have those books that just make you giggle or make you laugh, especially those romances where you're like, kind of, again, you're like kicking your feet under the covers, like what's gonna happen with these two? And also quite an interesting take on a romance with murder being involved. As I have already said, I'm trying to be an open-minded reader, so here we are. Well, there you have it, my friends. That is all of the hopefuls that I would like to read in the month of July. I don't want to put myself in a box. I don't want to feel bad about not getting to certain things, because that's not what reading is about, right? The whole point behind reading is to have fun and to enjoy it. And I, being the mood reader that I am these days, can 100% attest to reading what you want to read and only what you want to read. And if you aren't interested in reading it,
Boy, bye.
Put that book down. It is not worth your time. So with that being said, I would love to know what your hopefuls are for the month of July. Leave those in a comment down below, or have you read any of the books that we talked about in today's video? Let me know what your thoughts and opinions on those books were, or if there's anything else you think I should put on my hopefuls down the road. Drop everything in a comment down below. Let's start a conversation about it. And as always, if you liked this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button because it always helps a girl out. If you'd like to make sure you don't miss any of my other upcoming videos, like that unboxing video I mentioned or my monthly wrap-ups, go ahead and hit that subscribe button too. As always, it has been an absolute blast, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one.